All right, Nation, we're going to be breaking down Michael's mechanics here real quick. Right off the bat, I see he has a bit of a pushy arm action, and we're going to try to eliminate that with a few different mechanical adjustments down below. And by pushy, you can see that when he takes the ball out of his glove, his arm is pretty stiff. And then it climbs really high and he doesn't achieve a lot of layback. Layback is the degree to which this forearm flexes backwards into external rotation. We want to see the forearm layback to a degree more like this. This turns the forearm into sort of a catapult, and that's how you gain velocity. But most importantly for the knuckleball, it's where the centripetal force allows the ball to sit down or seat itself onto your fingertips, and that's how you feel the knuckleball consistently. And this makes Michael's throw really sort of stiff. You know, there's a big difference between picking up a heavy weight, something maybe 10 pounds or more, and a 5-ounce baseball. So when you pick up a weight of about 10 pounds, maybe even 5 pounds, you can feel your bicep and tricep kind of tense up and your deltoid tense up to pick that weight up. But if you pick up something as light as a baseball, which is 5 ounces, it's barely even there. Only the tiny little muscles in your shoulders fire, and none of those big muscles tense up. And we want to throw the baseball with those tiny little muscles, so we don't want any of these bulky muscles to fire, and that's what's apparently happening here with Michael. And I believe it all begins down below. Right here you can see that his knee tracks out over his toes, which puts his body weight into his quad as he goes down the hill. This is one of the most common mistakes that new knuckleballers present to me. Now, what you really want to do here is keep a vertical shin, as vertical as possible. You don't want that knee tracking out over the toe too much, because we want to get our body weight into our glute instead of our quad, which keeps our heel anchored to the ground, and it allows us to stay back a lot longer and allows us to rotate our hips much more efficiently because our hips are underneath our body a little bit better. And when those hips rotate, that's what creates the hip to shoulder separation, which initiates that layback, which turns our forearm into a catapult, which allows the ball to seat down onto our fingertips in order to feel the knuckleball. Now, I imagine this new position is going to be difficult for Michael to achieve, and you're going to feel that your body weight is sitting in your heel, and you're going to want to almost imagine that you're sitting back into a chair while keeping that shin as vertical as possible. And simply sitting into this position is going to eliminate a lot of this pushy arm action, because what's going to happen is when at front foot strike, he's going to rotate more on plane. That arm isn't going to climb so high and push using the big muscles. His hips are going to rotate, then his shoulders are going to rotate, and a little bit of stress is going to come off his arm so that he can use those tiny little muscles instead of those big bulky muscles to whip his arm through, which is incredibly important for the knuckleball. Now we're going to change angles here to the front profile so that we can talk about rotating the shoulders on plane with the hips. You can see Michael here, his arm climbs pretty high and he throws way over the top, and this is probably an attempt to cut the plate in half, which is a good idea. That's what we want to do, but we don't want our shoulders to be rotating off plane from our hips. You can see he gets what's called contralateral tilt, which is just a really fancy word for leaning back. And we want to sort of eliminate that lean back, and we want to keep our shoulders level, and we want our shoulders to rotate over our hips on the same plane. Now that lowers his arm angle, and it's totally fine. You can still cut the plate in half by actually manipulating the angle of your forearm, even though your shoulders are now rotating on plane. So those are the two major adjustments I'd recommend. Get into your glute. Don't let that knee track out over your toes so that your body weight goes in your quad. Rather keep it in your glute and the top of your hamstring. And then when it comes time to rotate, don't get so high with your arm. You want to rotate your shoulders on plane with your hips.